Don't you just love the way that people take responsibility when things are good and they're nowhere to be seen when things are bad? Don't you love the way people take the glory for things that they haven't done? Well, here's a classic one. Here is, as we know, one of the biggest routers in the country was Solomon Lew's Premier Investments, who took massive multi-million-dollar payments from the government under JobKeeper and gave them to themselves in executive bonuses and huge, humongous dividends. This is from the boss, Solomon Lew's chief executive, Mark McGuinness. And I'm going to quote from Mark McGuinness in the recently handed down earnings release for Premier Investments, the retailer who does things like Smiggle and a few of these retail brands. Here's what Mark had to say about the terrific performance, bearing in mind that the government just took away their biggest cost, wage bills, and they weren't very good at paying their landlords either. Here it is. Our record result during this global health crisis is no accident, but rather a function of our targeted strategic investments over the last decade. Our quality, our high quality culture, and the commitment of our global teams, together with the strong support of our suppliers. Now that was Mark McGuinness's evaluation of the record 30% rise in profits during the pandemic enjoyed by Premier Investments. Everybody knows that it was JobKeeper. Everybody knows that Mark didn't have to pay wages because we, the people, the public, were paying his wages for him, but he takes the glory nonetheless. Now the other little one here, which I really love, is Mirvac. And the reason I love Mirvac so much is because that was the first JobKeeper rort story broken, I think, by anybody, because we broke it ourselves after getting a phone call from the daughter of a contact who worked as a manager for Mirvac. She had this to say: "They sacked me this week," she said, "and after they sacked me, the JobKeeper thing was announced, and they rang up and wanted me to sign up for JobKeeper after they'd sacked me." And it wasn't just her. She talked to other colleagues who were in exactly the same position. So Mirvac was sacking people anyway when the government came out with its scheme. And then it went and jumped on the JobKeeper thing and asked them to sign up for JobKeeper, even though it had already sacked them in order to get its contractor base down. So they picked up 22 million in JobKeeper. They paid out 305 million in dividends to their shareholders. They manage 8 billion worth of projects, and they declared a $560 million profit. Yet they were on JobKeeper. This pandemic has marked the biggest bacchanalian feast of public subsidies, of government giveaways ever in Australian history. And yet nobody, certainly not the major media, because they're on the drip too, you know, the Australian and the Financial Review, the business journals, they're funded by these guys too. Where are the calls for JobKeeper to be paid back? Finally, if you take the trouble to go to the Tax Office transparency data and look for Mirvac, you will find that over the past 6 years of available data, and no doubt for many years before that, Mirvac has not paid one skerrick, 1 red cent in tax. 6 years, $20.5 billion in sales, in income, 0 tax. They've managed to do this because they've got this tricky trust structure. So they drop the costs into the company to force the company to make a loss or to force its profits down, and they put the profits into the trust side of it. It's called a staple security. It's basically a legalised rort. $20 billion, 0 tax. JobKeeper comes along. When they're making profits, they're still paying millions to their executives, and they put their hand up and say, yes, we're going to take some of this JobKeeper. On what basis does the board of Mirvac think that is a fair, reasonable, or an ethical or moral thing to do? It is a disgrace. And they and the big end of town, who've supped high on the public teat from JobKeeper, should pay it back. Like this video if you reckon the government should be pursuing corporate welfare bludgers, not just robo-debt victims. It's really important at this time, when the government has just forced payments out of Google into News Corporation and Nine Entertainment and others, that Australia supports independent journalism. We don't have these subsidised income streams, so thank you to the people already who've supported us on Patreon and who've bought the merch.